Guys, welcome to the J. Scott Outdoors podcast. This is going to be a fun episode with my friend Phil Cramer of Cramer Hunts on Instagram. Before we get to this episode, guys, I wanted to thank the sponsors, the guys that make this podcast possible. It allows me to spend as much time as I do on the podcast. I want to thank GoHunt.com. I want to thank Cody Nelson, who's the optics manager. I call him the glassing guru. He is the optics authority over at GoHunt.com Gear Shop. He's the manager over there. Give Cody a call if you guys are interested in any optics, whether it be binoculars, spotting scopes, rifle scopes, tripods, anything to do with glassing. If you just want to talk glassing techniques, anything to do with glassing, give Cody a call. 702-847-8747. That's extension 2. Or you can email him directly at optics@gohunt.com. You can also call him on his cell phone, 602-399-3699, or send him a text. He's very good about answering the J. Scott Outdoors podcast listeners. Give Cody a call if you're looking for any optics. I also want to thank GoHunt Insider. Remind you guys that you're going to get a $50 GoHunt Gear Shop gift card just for signing up. Go to gohunt.com/JScott. Also, Coues Ultralight Hunting. Coues just announced its Velo camo pattern. It's the new third pattern. I actually have the Velo Tiburon shorts on as we speak. I've been getting a handful. I got some last week and the week before, and then just a couple days ago, some more Velo camo from Coues. Go to Coues, that's KUIU.com to find out more. You can order anything right off the website. They're a direct-to-consumer model. I want to thank Coues for their sponsorship, and I want to thank Phonescope.com. Use the JScott20 promo code to get 10% discount on all orders. Guys, let's get right to this episode with Phil Cramer. If you don't follow him, I suggest you do. It's Cramer with a C, Cramer Hunts on Instagram. Welcome to the J. Scott Outdoors podcast. I've got my friend Phil Cramer, Cramer Hunts on Instagram. Phil, how you doing?
I'm doing real good, Jay. Real good. How about yourself, buddy?
Good. I've been up here in Colorado since the Coues turkey hunt. The last time I saw you, you were able to go down to Mexico with me and complete your Royal Slam, and then you finished or topped that off, should we say, with your Arizona, which you thought was going to complete your Royal Slam, with a triple bearded giant Coues turkey. So congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, you and I had a great trip. I just couldn't wait on filling that Royal Slam, so you and I got to do it together, and then just a phenomenal hunt in Arizona, and lucked out and killed a giant bird. I mean, I couldn't believe it when I really got to looking at him and saw those three beards. I was just ecstatic. It turned out really good.
When you were calling him in or working him and he was on his way, did you see multiple beards or just see a beard at all, or how did it go down?
So I saw he had a perfect fan, and as you know, I mean, on Coues, that big white-tipped fan is kind of where it's at. And he was coming in. I didn't have time to set up decoys, so he got out there about that 50, 60-yard range and started to kind of skirt me. And at that time, I could see he had a really good beard, and then he turned sideways, and I was able to draw him in closer. And then I saw where it looked like he had two. I wasn't 100% sure. But when I pulled the trigger, I did not know for sure he had multiple beards, and definitely didn't know he had three until I got up on him.
Unbelievable. And, I mean, a bird of that caliber with three beards, I mean, that's got to be a record, maybe even a state record type bird, isn't it?
And for the birds that people register, now I understand a lot of people, kill turkeys and don't register them with the NWTF. However, out of curiosity, I looked just the other day, and unless someone registers a new bird, that will put the number one Coues atypical turkey for the state of Arizona. So pretty neat.
Phenomenal. In a mountain range or close by where you grew up, it's got to be pretty neat to be able to complete that there and get your Arizona bird down.
Yep, and in a mountain range that I've spent a lot of time, and going from seeing very few turkeys and then watching through the Arizona Game and Fish efforts, of getting the Coues reestablished, how the population have taken off. And, I had some really good friends there with me at the time. and brought back a lot of memories of hunting with my dad and daughter there. Just couldn't have scripted it any better.
That's awesome. That's fantastic. Well, buddy, I wanted to talk to you today about Coues deer, and in Mexico, as well as Arizona, but in Mexico, you've got unique opportunities that you've been hunting down there, where you're hunting more of a desert style ranches, and we've had several podcasts where we've compared mountain ranches and desert ranches, and talked all about that. But one of the exciting things in knowing you and getting to talk to you, that I thought it would make a great podcast, is just the opportunity after coming off last year that was an extremely wet year, kind of almost an anomaly year in the desert. Had several things happen where a lot of the water tanks, deer were spread out all over. There was feed everywhere, and it made for maybe the type of hunting that you do a little bit more difficult. But the crazy thing is, with the holdover bucks, because of not harvesting that many bucks and letting a bunch of deer grow, the potential and the phenomenal genetics and some of the big bucks that you do have roaming around on your properties down there.
Oh, for sure. And you nailed it right on the head as usual. Last year was just a really weird year with all the water, and kind of the rut was really spotty and pockety and different things going on. But going into last year, we had just more big shooter bucks on camera than I think I've ever had. And I mean, anticipation was at an all-time high going into the season, and then we had the moisture issues happen and different things to where we had to rely on glassing quite a bit more. And even while we were glassing, we were noticing how pockety the rut was, and a lot of those big bucks had come in and looked like they were really active early in January and then kind of disappeared. So it just does nothing but fuel the fire to get this year going. I mean, I anticipate having those holdover bucks, but then also the bucks that came in to last year being maybe on the fence on if they were going to be a shooter or not. Now they're shooters, so we should have that many more hitless bucks that, I mean, I get chills just thinking about it right now.
Yeah, I mean, some of the bucks that you have that unless they got killed by a predator, that made it through the season. I mean, there's some big non-typical bucks, some big typical bucks. And I mean, that's kind of what you get, though, when you're hunting in the desert. You're hunting some of those ranches that are a little more roly-poly, a little flatter, a little thicker. It's a perfect breeding ground for big bucks to just grow up, right?
For sure, get that age class that they need to. And then also we have good genetics. I mean, like you say, we have the non-typicals that throw the extras and throw some trash, and then we have the big typicals as well. And you add, you take the age and good genetics, and you end up with the chance of monster deer. And that's what we've been able to do for the last 4 or 5 years is kind of watch those deer grow. And like you say, if they don't get killed by a predator and we don't kill them, that just means they're there for this year. And coming into last year, we had a really good moisture year, so the deer had to feed and everything to go do well with the antlers. Then we don't kill them. We're, running pretty good predator control programs on our ranches as well. So the chance of them being back this year and even bigger, it's really good, and gets a guy, just like I said, super excited to get going. So much so that we're actually going to start running trips down again as far as setting cameras and working on waters, and we've been adding drinkers, but we're going to do that throughout the summer, where I think you and I were talking last year, and I said I wouldn't ever go back again that early, but it's going to be definitely worth it.
All it takes is a few months to go by. Phil gets Coues deer on the brain, and he forgets that he said he wasn't going to go do it in the summer. The benefits of running cameras in the summer, Phil, would you agree that you're going to get some of those bucks? Yeah, you have bucks that move, from ranches to ranches, but you're going to get to see those bucks from, just starting growing their antlers, basically run them all summer long. You're going to get to really, I think, learn, and I'm curious your thoughts on this, learn their patterns of certain bucks and where they summered, and, if they're just right there and they never move. but you'll be able to kind of get more of an inventory by running cameras a longer period of time.
Oh, for sure, for sure. And one of the reasons why we're actually going to run cameras in strategic areas. Now, we're not going to cover the ranches up like we normally do later in the year, but with the drinkers that we've been putting in, we're actually putting enclosures around these drinkers. And, let's face it, we're hunting on cattle ranches. That's their business. I mean, that's what they do, is to grow cattle. And we've always had to kind of compete with pictures around water with the cattle and the deer. By us having these drinkers and enclosures put in, we can limit the amount of false pictures and having to weed through thousands and thousands of cattle pictures and focus just in on the game animals that are coming in to that drinker. And that gets me excited to exactly what you said, is see these deer in their home range and growing from, losing their antlers and putting on new growth and getting them patterned a lot better to actually how often they're coming to water. Are they actually truly moving just at night when they go to the daylight hours? The benefits are just, tenfold over what they would be as if we're just putting cameras up on regular stock tanks. So.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think let's talk a little bit about these drinkers. The interesting thing with these drinkers that you guys are building is you guys have, you have full control over where these drinkers go. And so you're strategically placing drinkers, having hunted these ranches for years, you're strategically placing drinkers not only where you know that they need water but almost like kind of a spot where you want them to be, in essence, right?
For sure. For sure. Having the history that we do with these ranches, we know the places that typically do not hold water year round. Now, that's not saying there won't be permanent water somewhere in the pasture, but we want that water where the deer is going to be. And we want that water to be reliable and permanent so the deer doesn't have to move. That also gives us the opportunity to put those drinkers where we want the deer to be as well. And that makes it easier for us to hunt. Maybe it's a more strategic area where we know that the deer and the does and everything will be come the rut time. So those big bucks will be there. It gives us a lot of different options to kind of customize or hand pick these locations where it might not make sense for the cattle to be there year round. However, we want the deer to be there year round. Or on the other side of that is to put them where typically they might dry up this time of year. We're in the dry season right now in Mexico in May and June, and we won't want those deer to leave our ranch. So instead of going to another ranch that might have water there year round, we can now hold them on our ranches. And the benefit's big. And the other thing is, we're controlling the water, so that way we can guarantee it's always filled. We have floats, we have storage tanks. We've actually gone to the point of building water trailers, so it makes it easier to move the water from one storage tank to another, and really kind of take it to a next level on this water game for us, not only for our hunting side of things, but also for the deer benefit, so they don't have to move and get better health on the deer and keep the deer on our home turf, so to speak.
That also, with having control over the drinkers, you potentially have the option then as well, if some of the dirt tanks have big deer on them, if you need to shut a drinker off and close it down, you have the ability to do that with the way you've got them set up. So if you've got a deer that's working good on a dirt tank and in a good spot, you have the ability to then basically close off access for that particular buck or those does, just trying to keep them positioned where you're going to have a better opportunity, whether it be bow hunting or whether it be rifle hunting. You're going to have an opportunity to have a better chance at that buck, if you will.
You bet. And as we saw last year when we got all of the weird winter moisture that's not normal, that almost became to the point where the deer had too many options. And like you say, with us controlling the water and not having to rely on the needs for the cattle so much, if we have that situation where a shooter buck might be using two water sources, one of our drinkers and a represso or a dirt tank, we have that option to just go shut our drinker off and force him into using that tank. And then that does nothing but double our chances on getting him killed. I mean, like say, whether with a bow or a rifle, whatever the setup might be, it does nothing but then increase our chance of success. And that's what we're there for.
We've talked before about bevendettos, which are basically water troughs made for cattle, and that's what they call them down in Mexico. Your drinkers are a little bit different in the fact that you've made them flush to the ground. And I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you're building a certain type of fence around so the deer can get in and out. You're building them flush to the ground. Talk a little bit about the success that you've had on your drinkers that you put in last year, and how rewarding it is, to kind of watch how having it flush to the ground, having a certain type of fence structure is in what you witnessed last year and your anticipation with these new drinkers.
Sure. As anything, it's a learning process, and the first couple ones we built, the enclosures might be a little too small, or what we've learned and kind of where we're at now is if you can get the drinker, the stored, not the storage tank, but the tank that they actually drink out of, if you can get that as natural and as flush to the ground as possible, number one, they feel more comfortable. Number two, it allows more of the wildlife, birds, javelina, everything, to come in and drink. And then we're building these fences, and we're just putting 3-wire fences around them to make it easier for the game to get under, but keep the cattle out. We're building them big enough that they actually don't feel trapped or confined when they come in, so they feel natural. We're not clearing all of the brush away out of these enclosures. We're keeping some of the cactus and a tree here or there, so it's natural to them. They feel comfortable. They're spending more time at the drinker. We're running a storage tank outside the enclosure, burying a pipe to a float system. And it basically gives the game, and like I said, not just deer, but javelina, birds. We've seen immediate success on these enclosures by, number one, putting them in the right area. Number two, putting the drinkers in a natural state that the deer and the game feel comfortable. And, they have been hitting them like clockwork, in and out, and as soon as we put them in and fill them up with water. So that right there tells me we're doing it right now. And with that success, by putting them in the places that we know the deer want to be anyway, it just makes it that much more successful. And I cannot wait to continue to get pictures, because we put a couple of these drinkers in last year late in the season, and not necessarily for high hopes of what we would get last year, but they immediately started hitting it. And with that, then it allowed us to kind of fine tune and hone exactly our system of doing it. So I think going into this year, we'll have 11 new drinkers installed just specifically for us, not for cattle or anything else. And that to me gives us the opportunity to pattern these big bucks, to hold these big bucks, as well as the does, and keep the does in the areas that they need to be. So when the rut kicks on, we don't have those wandering bucks that have to leave to find does and find water. So it should be really good.
In your opinion, how important is it to have water that animals can rely on? Meaning, have you seen where they get to wandering because they come and it's dry and they start just traveling and wandering, whereas it's so, in my mind, it seems so important to have where they come every time there's water and it never is dry and they can rely on that water?
It's huge, Jay. It's huge. We've seen it before, and we are firm believers that if they come in one time and that water is not there, it can take up to a month before they might come back to even check it. And they might not move far, but they have to be able to depend on that water. They don't want to exert the energy to go looking for water just to go to a spot that they can't depend on. And we've seen it as the repressos have dried up during the drier months. And some of those deer will leave, and if they get to a spot where they they have good feed and they can depend on that water time in and time again, they won't come back to your spot a lot of times. So what we're trying to do is avoid that. We want it to happen to where they can come in and rely on that water time and time and time again. And we've been working with our cowboys to understand that, and to make sure that if we're not there, they're keeping an eye on those drinkers and they're keeping those drinkers full. because it is huge to those deer to be able to depend on that water source.
And that's one of the things too with buying your own water truck. You now have the ability to haul water, and when there is a need, you have the ability to fill it.
Exactly. And by doing that, as we saw 2 or 3 years ago when it was so dry, we lost a lot of our deer to predators because the predators just camped out on the water source. Well, with us being able to disperse that now and not just have to have the water there for the cattle, we can disperse it and spread that out. So we should see a lot lower predation rate if we get into those situations again.
Let's talk a little bit about the style of hunting and how you like to set up your blinds and your different strategies for setup as well as glassing with the way that your ranch is set up.
You bet. Typically we'll go down, make a good long camera run in November, and then we'll make another trip in December. And usually by December, we have a pretty good idea of where those shooter bucks are calling home and where they're starting a pattern and get an idea. So at that point, then we start coming up with a game plan and even setting up our blinds. Now, for whatever reason in the past, I haven't ever really thought about it, but this year I've actually invested in some tripod blinds or stands, if you will, to get us up above the tree line off the desert floor to where we have the ability to not only glass, but also the ability to be within rifle range of, say, multiple water sources or different areas where we know the deer are frequenting. Now, that's going to be a new option this year that we haven't tried. I see no reason why it shouldn't be really successful. But the other thing that we do is, we have a lot of these situations where we know not only what drinker or what tank a deer is using, what part of that tank is. And we have the ability then to place that blind to give us the best shot, whether it be with a bow or with a rifle, to actually kill that buck because we have the trail camera pictures from it. So most of our tanks, our setups on our blinds are fairly close, pretty personal with the deer. And then on the bigger tanks, we have the ability to get back a little bit where the deer aren't near as, I don't want to say threatened, but that you don't have to be quite as careful with the blind setup as you do on some of the smaller close-in tanks. Most of the time, our blinds are set up early enough that we don't even really have to get crazy about brushing them in. The deer become used to them. I mean, I was on a tank last year that dried up quite a bit to the point where I was even hauling water into it. And I mean, I had deer within 10, 12 feet of my blind multiple times and never even paid attention to it. They just were used to it and they knew it was there. Typically, we play the prevailing wind and set the blind up accordingly. However, the good benefit that we have with these ground blinds is we can control our scent, and we get in and keep the back of it closed up. And my one hunting partner runs ozonics. I run a lot of skunk oil on the outside to keep the wind down as well, and we've been really successful by doing that. Anywhere from 8 yards to 200 yards, depending on which tank or which setup we're on. But
you guys have truly taken like Midwest whitetail and Eastern whitetail hunting tactics like this. You've basically been employing those on Coues deer, going full ninja style, like really getting into a lot of the same tactics that our brothers, use in the Midwest, right?
Oh, for sure. And this year we're going to throw a Western style onto that by using their typical tripod stand that you wouldn't see out west, that you would see back east. But we're going to set it up where we can actually cover not just a water source, but also cover area glassing. And I'm really excited for it. Like I'm looking forward to get up and climb that ladder and get up in that stand and see what a guy can see. And just the deer sighting alone is going to be a really, an advantage compared to just being on the ground in a ground blind. Because as we've talked before, even though we have areas of our ranch that we can do traditional Western style spot and stock glassing and Coues deer hunting, our biggest success is being able to set blinds and set water and catch those deer coming in and out of water. So if we take the best of the both of those and combine them by this tripod stand, I think it's going to be pretty exciting. And sitting blinds day in and day out is not for everybody. So by having the combination of both, and then having some country that a guy can glass and move around on, it gives us the best of both worlds, and kind of makes it really enjoyable because you don't have to be locked into one method or the other. Now, that being said, we have proven that if you're hunting one specific buck and you have that buck in mind, you setting up that ground blind and doing everything you can to stay in that ground blind. And if you do it long enough, you're going to kill that buck. And we've proven that time and time again. So
let's talk about some of the bucks that you guys have killed and some of the bucks that have been on camera and, if you will, for a lack of a better term, haunted you. We're talking about some very, very large, 120 class caliber, bigger bucks, big desert bucks, right?
Oh, for sure. One that comes to my mind right off the top of my head is a couple years ago, had one buck we called Big Tex. He was a regular. I mean, he came in and out of this tank like clockwork. Every couple days he was there. For whatever reason at the time, I was just wrapped up with drop tines, and I chose not to hunt it. So my hunting partner, Tim, said, "Hey, I'll go set that blind." And I knew he was a big buck, but when Tim killed that buck and I put my hands on him, he was like a 124-inch deer. I mean, just a phenomenal pig of a Coues deer. And I was just like, wow, that was awesome. Another buck that comes to mind 2 years ago, we had a gentleman, a hunter down here, and he went to this tank that we had multiple bucks show up on, and he was able to kill a buck, I think, on the third day, and 123-inch deer. He had like 13 inches of scoreable tines before you ever got to his G1s. Just incredible, and these are deer that we get on camera. Now, on the flip side of that, I hunted a buck for 2 years. He was fairly regular and then just disappeared, and he had all kinds of trash.
Okay, that was the typical buck, yeah.
Yep, big non-typical. We called him Big Deuce because technically he's a mainframe 2-point, and then he threw a drop tine, and then he threw another drop tine, and he's got an extra coming off his G2, and that buck's been haunting me. I'm excited to see if he shows back up this year, because we've had that, where they disappear for a year, and then the next year they show back up. But on the other side of the coin, we've got some big typicals. Tim, my partner down there, he killed a big typical a couple years ago that we didn't have a picture on until we got down there in January, and then all of a sudden this buck's showing up, and he's showing up every 3 or 4 days. And Tim went and set up on him, and sure enough, I think on the 3rd or 4th day, in walks this giant typical, and Tim puts him down. It's exciting. I really enjoy the camera aspect of it that we do. Now we're getting into the drinker aspect as well, and we're even looking at getting into some minerals for these deer when they're growing their antlers, when they're in the hot part of the season, that their body needs some more nutrients to try and help them for body health. And I'm excited what our results can be. These bucks that we haven't killed are still there. I'm excited for what they'll be this year, but not only that, it's been fun watching kind of how we've evolved our hunting system and our setups and what we're using to basically harvest these big, mature Coues deer. It's been fun growing. It's been fun learning. And I'm sure we'll go down there this year and learn a bunch more too. And that's what it's all about, right? And that's what we look forward to. And that's, like I said, I'm sitting here talking about it with you, and I'm getting chills just thinking about it.
All fired up, yeah. Let's talk about some of the things that you've witnessed as far as, you're hearing deer grunting and bucks chasing does. Sometimes you're hearing them before they show up. Talk about some of the chaos, some of the buck fights, some of the, bucks chasing the does right in front of you, right in front of your blinds, that kind of stuff.
It's been crazy. Last year, for example, I was sitting a blind. I literally started hearing deer grunting, and not just one buck. You could tell it was coming from 2 or 3 different directions. So I'm sitting in the blind just thinking, oh man, anything's going to show up, right? the next thing I do is I hear bucks fighting. I just hear antlers crashing. I mean, and you can tell it's violent. It's not just a tickling of the tines. I mean, these deer are going at it. 5 minutes later, in runs this a really nice, mature, big, heavy, typical 3x3 Coues deer that's missing a G2. You can tell he just came straight off a fight. He runs right into the tank just like a bull elk is, during the rut. He comes in belly deep, lays down, cools off, jumps up, runs off again, and immediately you start hearing grunting again. And it was one of the coolest experiences for me. I mean, and I never even put my hand on the gun, just to witness that and witness those deer just full on in rut mode going crazy. And it just an absolute blast. Another time, that I can think of, sitting there glassing, and you could tell one doe had come into heat, and it was like a magnet. You could see bucks running over the top of ridges, 3/4 of a mile away, until pretty soon you have 8 or 9 bucks fighting and chousing and going after this one doe. I mean, to the point where you almost felt bad. It's like, gosh dang, let her rest a little while.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when you get to witness that and witness it up close, I mean, those bucks that were fighting at times were as close as 30 yards, and then when I'm sitting in the blind and I've had that buck run in and you could hear him grunting right behind you, you're talking 12 to 13 yards at times. It's just it's a really, really neat experience and fun. And it makes those long hours sitting in the blind all that much more worthwhile when that type of activity goes on.
Oh, 100%.
We haven't gone into the point of actually rattling and calling ourselves, but it's another one of those tactics that I kind of want to steal from, our Eastern brothers and try it and see what happens, because I think, given the right situation and the time, I think it'd be phenomenal. I think you'd have deer running over you almost.
That's exciting. You're getting me excited just talking about it. Phil, it's always great having you on the podcast. For anybody out there listening, I understand you have a tag or two available maybe for this year because of the COVID-19 stuff. If anybody's out there interested in a Coues deer hunt, get a hold of Phil. I'll link it up in the show notes. Is that right, Phil?
Yeah, it is, Jay. Last year, given the fact that we had a lot of holdover bucks and we're kind of getting a little more serious about our predator control and the water issues are taken care of now, we decided to expand, and we were hunting a ranch that we were only buying 1 or 2 tags from. I went ahead and committed to all of the tags on that ranch. I wanted it exclusively. I didn't really want any other competition. So we, going into this year, have more tags than we've ever had committed for. And that being said, we didn't know the economy and the COVID stuff was going to happen. So, yeah, I do have a little bit of availability, and it's something that doesn't happen very often. But this year, it's just the way the dice rolled. So, that is correct.
Awesome, man. Well, I'm excited. I always love following on Instagram and just seeing all the bucks and the trail cam pics and getting to talk to you about the strategy of how you guys are hunting them, and then over the years seeing some of the giants that you guys have put down. It's a neat opportunity and pretty cool for sure. It's always great having you on the podcast. Congratulations again on your Royal Slam, and congratulations on shooting your second Gould's, first in Arizona there, that monster bird that might be the state record, and just a phenomenal accomplishment. And I know, as much of a turkey nut as you are, it was a great way to kill that Arizona Gould's for sure, and have it be a triple bearded bomber bird. So it's pretty sweet.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Jay. Given the challenges we had coming into the season, we didn't even know if we were going to get to hunt and travel and that sort of thing. So I feel really blessed at the way it worked out, and really excited for this coming Coues deer season. We're trying a lot of things we haven't done in the past, and I think it's going to pay huge.
Guys, I want to apologize. We had a little bit of an audio technical issue there with Phil right there at the end of the podcast, and I lost him. But I want to encourage you guys to follow Cramer Hunts on Instagram, and also if you guys are looking for hunt and it sounded interesting to you, the hunt that Phil was describing for big Coues deer down in the deserts of Mexico, you can reach out to him on his Instagram account. I'll also link up his contact on the show notes of this podcast. Guys, thanks for listening. Thanks for tuning in. If you got any questions or comments of me, you can always send me an email at jscottoutdoors@gmail.com. Until the next episode, guys, God bless.